Chicago, Bill Plant in Chicago, Bruce Morton in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, Bernard Kalb in Saigon, and Ed Rabel in Berea, Kentucky.
Good evening. Richard Nixon today set forth on the campaign that he and the Republican Party hope will lead to the White House. His starting point was Chicago, a city and Nixon would like to remember. CBS News correspondent John Hart reports.
The Chicago arrival was as overwhelming as its advance man meant it to be, and as orderly, and as joyful, and as contrasting with the battleground these streets were last week. Confetti came in clumps and clouds, and a crowd of tens of thousands choked the financial district for a welcome Nixon found the best he'd ever had. Nixon has benignly refrained from talking about the disorders of last week. He hasn't had to. By common consent, the main issue in this campaign is law and order. But since all the candidates are for that, it becomes an issue where the differences come in tone and style. Nixon will do a lot of this. Afternoon motorcades, timed carefully for the early evening news broadcasts, shunning night rallies where his political advisors feel mainly the faithful come anyway. Instead, there will be telethons, a device Nixon found in Oregon helped him raise his popularity by 10%. His advisors expect Hubert Humphrey to make some temporary gains in the opinion polls now that his nomination is settled. But they say Nixon can now tag the administration with bad intelligence and bad communications in Vietnam, in the economy, and now Chicago.
Nixon aides say they regret that law and order is the key issue of this campaign. They deny that this orderly appearance today was for purposes of comparison with the events of last week. They do admit privately that it is an appealing comparison, and what better place to begin to make it than on this corner, where last week, with Democrats present, order was lost and the law disgraced. John Hart, CBS News, Chicago.
This is Bill Plant in Chicago, a place for a logical beginning, according to the Nixon campaign staff, because Illinois, which Nixon lost by an eyelash in 1960, is one of the key states in his election strategy this year. And so it is, too, with the other states on this initial campaign swing: California, Texas, Pennsylvania. All of them big states with large electoral vote totals, which Nixon needs to win in this three-way race with Humphrey and Wallace. All of them states which he lost in 1960, except for California, which he expects to be a big battleground this year. The big state strategy is important, too, because Nixon has all but written off the Deep South: Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and possibly Georgia, to George Wallace. So for the next 9 weeks, Richard Nixon will be concentrating his appearances and his issues where the votes are. Bill Plant, CBS News, Chicago.
Spiro Agnew's campaign opened not in the streets of Chicago, but here in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, a small town famous for overalls and Republicans. But the theme was the same.
The words law and order are going to ring through this campaign and ring through the oratory of the candidates. Each one of us is going to hear them differently. To some, law and order will mean police brutality and the status quo, where reluctance to pursue justice, equal opportunity, and rights. To others, law and order is going to mean safety from attack, whether from the criminal or the mob. It's not the words that are wrong, it's only some of the people that use them and how they use them.
From here, the Agnew campaign moves to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, then on to other appearances in Washington and in New Jersey. In all of these places, law and order will be the keynote sounded. Bruce Morton, CBS News, with the Agnew campaign in Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
In Chicago, one motorcycle policeman, perhaps aware that the image of the Chicago police is a bit tarnished, said over and over today, "Move back to the curb, please. Pretty please." Vice President Humphrey interrupted his campaign strategy talks at Waverly, Minnesota, to attend a meeting of the National Security Council in Washington. Lawrence O'Brien, Humphrey's campaign manager, said President Johnson has made it crystal clear he will actively support Humphrey's campaign. He said Humphrey also is seeking the support of Senator Edward Kennedy.
Like a good mild taste.
Did you address me?
Thought you might like a Parliament. It's an American cigarette.
Really?
It's the mouthpiece cigarette. You see, the filter's recessed. Makes the most of mildness.
Really?
Well, what about Parliament?
Parliament? Sorry, it's the other way.
You get the most out of mildness with Parliament cigarettes.
The electro-coated Persona gives such a smooth, comfortable shave. Why shouldn't injector users have a smooth, comfortable shave, too? Introducing the electro-coated injector blade.
The President's Special Commission on Violence said today it will investigate the Chicago disorders during the Democratic Convention. Chairman Milton Eisenhower said the commission acted on its own without consulting President Johnson, who set up the group after the murder of Robert Kennedy. Hardly had Congress reconvened today before members started arguing over Chicago Mayor Richard Daley and the way his police conducted themselves against demonstrators. In the House, Roman Puchinsky of Illinois declared, "Thank God we have Mayor Daley." In the Senate, Stephen Young of Ohio called security planning a disaster and a disgrace, and he accused Daley of imposing a police state like that in East Berlin and Prague. On the other side, Louisiana's Russell Long. And later, talking to Roger Mudd, he assailed television's role.
I thought that the television coverage was the sorriest job that TV has done in its history. As far as reporting something to the American people, I thought that they left out more facts than they put in, and it gave a completely improper picture. For example, they undertook to give the impression that the police were brutalizing that mob that came there for the purpose of breaking up the convention and violating the law, and the fact was that if that police force didn't sustain more injuries trying to uphold law and order than that mob received, I would be very much surprised. Very little was said about all the injuries heaped upon those police, all the insults they took, and I didn't see anything said about that big Viet Cong battle flag. It was almost as big as a bedspread they're waving out there in Grant Park, screaming for Ho Chi Minh and insulting those police.
Senator, considering that the federal government exercises control over the networks, do you think the federal government ought to do something to pursue your charge or suggestion that there was a conspiracy?
I personally think it might be well to take a good look at all that was presented. And I think that the whole picture would make up an unjustified attack on the city of Chicago and a good police force which was doing its duty, a great mayor who was doing his duty. I think that if they're going to be so unfair as to not give the second largest city in America a chance to defend itself after it was maligned for 5 days hand running over television, that we ought to inquire into it to see if the networks can justify doing all of that to a great city and a great mayor without giving the man a chance to defend himself. Yeah, I think we ought to ask some questions about it. We're not going to do anything to you, you know that, but it doesn't hurt to ask you why.
Or make us think you're going to do something to us.
Well, I'm not going to engage in any sort of brutality on the networks, but I wouldn't mind torturing their conscience a little bit.
CBS today turned down Mayor Daley's request for an hour of prime time to give his own version of what happened in Chicago. CBS President Frank Stanton said in a telegram that CBS News gave fair and ample coverage to the several sides of the demonstrations. And he noted that Daley voiced his views in a half-hour interview with Walter Cronkite during the last night of the convention and in prime time. A group of Negroes tried to attend a hearing for 3 members of the Black Panthers at the Brooklyn Criminal Courts building today. But reports said they were stopped and attacked by about 200 off-duty policemen who are members of an unofficial organization called the Law Enforcement Group. Some of them wore Wallace for President buttons, and many carried rubber truncheons. After turning the Negroes back, the policemen themselves filled the courtroom. The attorney for the defendants charged police intimidation, but the judge said he would be intimidated by no one.
I've been to the doctor, and I now know that I do have arthritis. When I get some pain there, I take a couple of Bufferin, and I get some fast relief. Certainly, coaching a college baseball team, I get a lot of physical exercise. I suffer a little bit for it. I have complete confidence that when I take Bufferin that I'll get relief, and I do.
If you hurt from the minor pain of arthritis, remember, Bufferin can help.
Ethel, I think there's a dragon in my mouth.
Let's see.
Yeah?
Yes, there is. Oh, what you need is Vote toothpaste, Marvin. It's for adults who eat and smoke, and things like that. Vote has a strong, fresh taste. And it cleans and brightens. Oh, did I hurt you, dear?
No, it's just so refreshing, Ethel.
You're feeling the dragon being slain.
Dragons are funny.
Not from my side, Marvin.
Vote the dragon killer.
The largest city in Israel, Tel Aviv, had one of its worst sabotage incidents in several years today. 3 bombs exploded near the main bus terminal, killing 1 person and wounding 49. Police arrested 4 Arab suspects, and they had to place about 50 other Arabs in protective custody to save them from angry crowds of Israelis. There were more Viet Cong mortar and rocket attacks against South Vietnamese cities and military installations today. Among the targets was Nha Trang, the command center for U.S. forces in the Central Highlands. The shelling there killed 1 person and wounded 38 civilians and Allied soldiers. The enemy attacks this year against population centers have prompted the Allies to take some rather unusual security measures. There's a good example in the following film report from CBS News correspondent Bernard Cal.
You never know where you're going to run into a sandbag bunker in South Vietnam. You can even find them in the sky of all places. It's a kind of war in which war can erupt anywhere, anytime. And so everything can be called military terrain, including this. What this is, believe it or not, is the roof of the 7-story United States Embassy here in Saigon. At the end of January, the enemy launched their surprise Tet offensive. And it was so much of a surprise that they succeeded in penetrating the embassy grounds. There were casualties on both sides. The enemy never made it into the embassy building, but they did manage to embarrass the U.S. military establishment here, and they, the military, decided never again. And so these bunkers were set up on the roof, and they're manned around the clock. Michael Coughlin of Bronxville, New York, the embassy security officer.
We've gotten intelligence time and time again that this is a prime target since it's a symbol. And they've seemed to change their tactics from tactical targets to symbolic targets. And so we know that we're going to have to fight for this place soon. We're expecting trouble here. These kids are ready for it, but it's a tense thing for them. 24 hours a day, they're watching.
What these MPs possess to an inordinate degree is an acquired characteristic that you pick up in Vietnam if you like the idea of living. And that characteristic is suspicion. You give no one, nothing moving, walking, strolling, driving, the benefit of the doubt. What have you discovered looking down there on the street?
As many VC goes by you day by day. You don't know it, but they're going by you. Only thing you do is just watch them.
Have you found anything about yourself that's changed looking down on that street for 7 months?
No, sir, I don't guess so. It just seems like sometimes you just wish they'd hurry up and get here instead of messing around, but they're going to come when they want to.
Are you suspicious of everything down there that's walking and moving?
Every Vietnamese, I believe you have to be, sir.
What are you looking at? What are you looking for from the roof here?
We're looking for any suspicious vehicles that might be driving down the road here.
What's been the most unusual thing you've seen, the most suspicious thing you've seen in your 3 months here?
I think it would probably be these taxi cabs. They stop. I don't know if they really mean to or not. They stop, they pick up people down here, and when they stop, we're on them right now because we can't take any chances up here.
When you're on them, what do you mean when you say that?
We blow the whistle. Sometimes we fire warning shots at them to get them moving. We don't want them around here.
What about the people?
The people, we watch the people, too. Somebody could come up, drop a grenade in the gate. Somebody could maybe take a sniper round at you, anything like that. We're always watching.
A few days ago, a Viet Cong agent was captured in the greater Saigon area. He was carrying some hand-drawn sketches of the U.S. Embassy compound. They were crude sketches, but the sketches did show the entrances to the embassy compound and to the embassy building itself. It was the latest evidence for that feeling here that if the Viet Cong launch a new major offensive against this capital city, this U.S. Embassy building will be a prime target. Bernard Kalb, CBS News, on the roof at the U.S. Embassy in Saigon.
In Czechoslovakia, newspapers and radio and television stations came under strict censorship today. Among other things, they are prohibited from issuing any reports that could be considered critical of the Soviet occupation forces. The Federal Aviation Administration today proposed sharp cutbacks of flights during bad weather in and out of New York, Chicago, and Washington as a way to reduce air traffic congestion. The proposal would assign hourly limits on instrument-controlled flights at New York's 3 major airports: National Airport in Washington and O'Hare in Chicago, the nation's busiest airport. The proposed rule, the first of its kind, also would put the 5 airports almost off limits to private planes. A public hearing on the plan is scheduled for later this month.
Don Anderson is driving home from work in a Piper Comanche. Today, Don has covered 600 miles, made calls in 4 different cities, landed several contracts, and he's home in time for dinner. This weekend, the Anderson family will load up the Piper and head for their favorite lake. How about you? Wouldn't you like to fly? It's really very easy. Just visit your nearby Piper dealer and take the special introductory flight lesson he's offering for just $5. You'll fly in a sleek, good-looking Piper Cherokee with modern low wing. You'll handle the controls yourself with the guidance of an expert government-rated flight instructor. You'll find it a fascinating experience, a most rewarding sport. Why not visit your nearby Piper dealer and try this exciting special $5 introductory flight lesson? And for full information on flying, write for your Learn to Fly kit to Piper, Box 311, Lock Haven, Pennsylvania.
Attorney General Ramsey Clark said today that the Justice Department stepped up its drive against organized crime in the fiscal year just ended. He cited a record number of cases involving racketeers and gamblers. His comments in an annual review were seen in part as replying to critics who charged that the Justice Department, under Clark, is not being tough enough with criminals. George Boggs, a Negro killed in racial violence in Berea, Kentucky, over the weekend, was buried today in the same cemetery where Elza Rucker, the white victim of the same violence, was buried yesterday. It was an ironic footnote to a community which is still asking, why Berea, Kentucky? Ed Rabel reports.
Berea, Kentucky, located in the foothills of the Appalachians, is a quiet little college town of about 5,000 people, most of whom are white. Today, it is in a state of shock following the gun battle between Negroes and whites, which left 2 men dead and several others injured.
The trouble began Sunday night after a rally of the segregationist States' Rights Party. Authorities say 3 carloads of Negroes drove up and shooting broke out. One of the dead was a Negro, the other white. 6 Negroes and 8 whites have been charged with murder. Defending the white men is States' Rights Party attorney J.B. Stoner. We interviewed him and party director Edward Fields. They claim the shooting was started by Negroes.
A bunch of black savages tried to murder men, women, and children, and they especially concentrated their fire upon women and little children. Something that the press so far has kept a complete secret.
How did this happen, sir?
That happened because some black savages hate white people, and so they wanted to shoot up the meeting. And they shot more so at the children than they did the adults.
City authorities say they have not yet determined who fired the first shot. The spokesman for the Negro community, Mrs. Mary Ferris, feels Negroes who did show up at the rally were goaded by loudspeakers.
Loudspeakers they used could be heard 3/4 of a mile away. And this is what caused agitation.
The loudspeakers brought their racist message to the Negro community.
3/4 mile away.
And then what happened? How many Negroes were involved in the incident?
Only the 7. The one that was killed and the 6. Only these boys. Several of us, even several of us drove by, but we didn't like it. We didn't stop or try to interfere. But the fact remains that there are people, even in our little community, that can become aroused and angry, which has made us all fighting Negro in our community very, very concerned and very sick.
Never before in its 113-year history has Berea experienced a racial clash. Motels and restaurants have been integrated for years. Berea College was integrated until 1914, when a state law required segregation. It was reintegrated after the 1954 Supreme Court decision. Many of the citizens believed their racial peace was disrupted by outsiders. But unlike many communities where black militants have been accused of agitation, the whites of Berea are leveling charges against people of their own race. Mayor Clinton Hensley.
The only thing that I can attribute any of it to is that an organization came into our community for reasons that I can't explain. All of them from out of state, I believe, except one person that was listed in this altercation, have addresses other than Kentucky.
You all consider yourselves racist at all?
Yes, sir. We're proud to be white racists.
Absolutely. What is your...
We're loyal to the white race. I'm proud of it.
What is your ultimate goal and aim?
It's to have a white Christian America without any Jews or niggers.
We're in favor of deporting all the niggers back to Africa where they came from. You think that should be true for Berea also? Absolutely.
This meeting was called by an ad hoc committee that wants to raise defense money for the Negroes accused of murder. It includes both whites and Negroes. But one white in the audience disagreed.
Are we going to represent only the militant group, is what I want to know. And in the future, are we going to appropriate money by the city council voting on it and the mayor voting for it to represent every hoodlum and outlaw in the county?
Some people have made some statements to the effect that somebody might get the idea that because we're supporting these men, we consider them innocent. Well, I'd like to point out the fact that in this country, before you're tried, you're presumed innocent.
That's right.
And let's remember this point.
The committee is continuing with its plans to raise money for the defense of the Negroes. And among many in Berea, the overwhelming emotion appears to be not hate, but sorrow.
The only visible evidence of the shootout in Berea is this bullet-marked metal shack. The Justice Department has indicated there will be an investigation. But to the people of Berea, both Negro and white, these things will only serve as grim reminders that their town was the victim of racial violence. It is something they would just as soon forget. Ed Rabel, CBS News, Berea, Kentucky.
The Senate Judiciary Committee met today to take up once again whether Abe Fortas should be approved as Chief Justice of the United States. But only 5 of the 16 members showed up. That's 4 short of a quorum, and Chairman James Eastland called the session off. He said he didn't know when he'd try again. The 3 astronauts scheduled for an Apollo flight around the Earth next month safely went through a countdown rehearsal today at Cape Kennedy. It was the first time such a checkout has been run since a fire killed 3 Apollo astronauts during a similar spacecraft test early last year. This time, the spacecraft door remained open and rescue crews stood by, but the only trouble was from an overheated transformer 60 feet from the capsule, which put out some smoke but did not catch fire. Caltech was declared the winner today over MIT in the cross-country electric car race between students from the 2 schools. MIT's car reached Pasadena Monday, although it had to be towed the last part of the way, and Caltech's entry didn't arrive in Cambridge until this morning. However, under a complicated system of handicaps and penalties for towing, elapsed time for Caltech's car was found to be 30 minutes under MIT's time. Prices closed higher today on the New York Stock Exchange. Volume was 10 million shares. The exchange index rose 31 cents.
Can this exquisitely proportioned beauty survive? She's about to be tormented. Watch. 27 tons of sand and rock will crash down on our beauty. We're talking about the elegant new ballpoint pen from Bic. The refillable Click. Can the Click survive? We'll soon know. Dare we look? Yes, the sleek finish gleams. Retracting mechanism works perfectly, but will it right? Like all Bics, the new Click writes first time, every time. Its diamide ball never fails. Carry it proudly.
Pick up a beauty today. The new Bic Click. Refillable. 8 delicious colors. Very expensive. 49 cents each. You'd be silly to spend more for any pen.
Now to Washington and Eric Severide for some thoughts on political conventions and the election process. Eric?
The sounds of last week's Chicago battleground echoed in the more decorous halls of Congress today. House Republican leader Ford said he is very apprehensive now that neither Nixon nor Humphrey will get a majority of the Electoral College vote, and that we would then face a real constitutional crisis with the people aroused over a presidential choice made by horse trading in the House of Representatives, and with the presidency itself thereby tarnished and impaired. Senator Nelson of Wisconsin has filed a bill for a commission to study ways and means of reforming the convention system or substituting for it a nationwide presidential primary. The chief objection seems to be that the convention system is undemocratic and does not represent the national will. It can be and ought to be made more democratic, but the difficulty this year is that the national will or consensus is too fragmented to be coherent. And whatever the faults of these two conventions, their choices pretty clearly did represent the majority will of party members, the people who make the political system work in fair weather and foul. Nationwide party primaries would be far from a cure-all. They would extend the already too extensive period of active campaigning, would require enormous sums of money with the richer candidates unfairly favored, would probably mean a large number of candidates and runoff elections to follow, and would by no means guarantee the selection of greater men as nominees or men more up-to-date in their thinking. What research on the subject exists indicates clearly enough that the average convention delegate is better educated, more sophisticated, and knowledgeable about candidates and issues than is the average voter in the country. Stronger arguments can be advanced for changing or abolishing the system of electoral college votes by states. And if there is no majority of electoral votes this fall, and it does go to the House, the pressure for doing away with that part of the system will be enormous. Even if one candidate does receive an electoral majority in November with 3 or 4 parties in the field, it is reasonably certain he will receive a minority popular vote. More people in combination will have voted for somebody else than for the next president. That has been true of many presidents, including Lincoln, Cleveland, Wilson, Truman, and Kennedy. But somehow the Republic survived. Harry?
That's the news. This is Harry Reasoner for Walter Cronkite. Good night.
You can buy the freshest just-picked greens. But a salad without wishbone is just a bowl of wet vegetables. Wishbone Italian adds sassy flavor, real Italian flavor, young garlic, mild peppers, floating in golden oil and vintage vinegar. Choose Wishbone Italian, because a salad without wishbone is just a bowl of wet vegetables.
Are you looking for a drink to make you cool from your head down to your toes? Well, stop that looking and start sipping Lipton, icy Lipton tea. Alone or with food, it's the briskest flavor ever brewed, because Lipton's flow-through tea bag gives you 2 bags of flavor in 1. Refresh, my friend, and start sipping Lipton, icy Lipton tea. Like an instant? Get Lipton Instant. Get fresh brewed flavor instantly.
Direct from our newsroom in New York, this has been the CBS Evening News with Harry Reasoner substituting for Walter Cronkite.